Master Remoter on the beat.
Chum chuma, 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 chum chuma. Gaila, fine coma. Oing a needy a pastiluma. Gaila, just a coma. Oing a needy a builuma. Gaila, Kikoma. Oing a needy a biniluma. Gaila, wine coma. Oing a needy a biniluma. Chum chuma, 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 chum chuma. Comme coup d'un vétéran, in a nigiti. In a bana wine coma, wine coma, Ichema wine coma, wine coma. In a bana wine coma, wine coma, Ichema wine coma, wine coma. Gaila, fine coma, wine a needy a pastiluma. Gaila, just a coma, wine a needy a builuma. Gaila, Kikoma, wine a needy a biniluma. Gaila, wine coma, wine a needy a biniluma. Chum chuma, 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 chum chuma. Baba tuma, andong mala, bema no ye mala. Ma wenti papa, nilunga na, matimbu ilunga, yipinga kia. Chuma, nyamalo, chuma, nandong, masekia, machu, wine and wine, the vijigide. In a bana wine coma, wine coma, Ichema wine coma, wine coma. In a bana wine coma, wine coma, Ichema wine coma, wine coma. Chum chuma, 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 chum chuma. Na wine bag liga sa na wine bag na wine tira kumichi ko wine bag liga sa ko wine bag bumsu never restus yosye bana mababla masabana yosye bana fitasitay yosye bana mababla masabana yosye bana fitasitay gaila kikoma wine niti ya biniluma gaila wine koma wine niti ya biniluma gaila fine koma wine niti ya pasiluma gaila just koma wine niti ya builuma gaila kikoma wine niti ya biniluma gaila wine koma wine niti ya biniluma chum chuma chum chuma chum chuma. Who let you from young Fredo chum chuma chum chuma ankumte matichiato divine chum
Good afternoon, Amazonians, and welcome to this broadcast. It is exactly 16 minutes after midday in Amazonia, and the debate is on. I would say the chaos, mostly within the diaspora community of Amazonia, could turn out to be some form of blessing because it has sparked up a necessary debate, constitutionality, governance, and policy. And with me on the platform are technicians of the constitutions, I would say, who are ready to educate. This will be a civil discussion, and we hope that you will learn something at the end of the day. Once again, you're welcome. I have the Secretary of the Restoration Council, Dr. Winnie Lobati, and Director of Cabinet at the Office of the President, Mr. Eric Ate, with me. Good afternoon, lady and gentlemen. Gentlemen, good afternoon, please. You're welcome.
Thank
If
you.
you can hear me, let me just know.
Thank you. Thank you. I can
Oh,
hear
wow,
you.
I can hear you.
that's
Can you hear me?
yes,
I
I
can
think I
hear
can. I can hear you
you.
very loud and very clear.
Thank you.
That's just amazing. We've had in recent time a series of concerns from our people. I would say some fighting, some wanting to actually be informed. But before we even get into that part of our discussion, the news just reached in our decks. CNN News by for Harrison has reported, I think earlier this morning, that the special representative of the UN Secretary General for Central Africa and head of UNECA, if I'm not mistaken, that is Francois Fall. Francois Fall has said Cameroon and Amazonia groups should reach a ceasefire deal so that Africa would enjoy the 2021 AFCON that begins this Sunday. It's quite that an important figure like Mr. Francois Faure will be talking only now. There are concerns that the United Nations or this representative office, which is most, I think it should be in Congo Brazzaville, has been silent. And they are talking hours to a competition to see if they can strike a deal for a ceasefire. That is where I want us to start the discussion, and then we'll dive into the topic of the day. Maybe I should start with the lady, that is gentlemanly. Dr. Lobati, what do you have to say about that proposal from Francois Fall?
Thank you for being on this platform, Patty, with you and our guests and citizens of Amazonia. Basically, they're really not the guests, they are the owners of the house. So um, I am grateful to be part of this panel this morning. Um, when you read what the CNN said, I smiled and chuckled, and I said, Amazonia never started a war. We never started a war. We never took up arms. We're only self-defending, and there is no reason why this war cannot be stopped. And there's only one party that needs to stop the war, the one that is the aggressor. They need to stop the war. If they stop the war, guess what? I think we can be at a negotiation table, the Swiss-led process, and we can talk our terms of separation. That is what we really need to be dealing with. And all the other people that may be using our territory, um, let me call it maybe illegally, to play their sports that we have not approved, they are at risk of being caught between crossfires of bullets or whatever that may come. It would not be our responsibility. It will be the responsibility of the organizers.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Ati, please.
I think Dr. Lobati hit it on the nail. The fact is, we did not start this war. You know, La République du Cameroon declared war on us. Everyone knows the story when their president flew in from wherever he came from and declared war at the airport. And since then, they have been prosecuting the war, killing our people, causing a lot of atrocities. And now the international community has prescribed, to both sides to come together on a negotiating table to try to foster peace and to negotiate. Well, we have been in Switzerland for a very long time. When I say we have been in Switzerland, which means we have accepted to go to Switzerland, to wait for La République to meet us there so we can negotiate an end to the war. But La République has refused based on its actions because they want to continue the aggressive option, thinking it will be better for them to beat us to submission. So for someone to sit somewhere and say, hey, you know what? Please just drop down your weapons so Africa can enjoy whatever they are going there to enjoy. First of all, La République du Cameroon has no right to organize anything on our territory. Our independence has been restored. This is an illegal occupation by another sovereign nation over another sovereign nation. So instead of asking for a ceasefire, they should tell La Republic to pull out from our country. And then if they want to organize anything in Ambazonia, they should be working with the leadership of Ambazonia, not La Republic du Cameroon. Thank you.
Yeah, it's striking. Let's talk a little bit further about this suggestion. I would say there's something good about this, and there's really something bad, like you've all pointed out. Ambazonia has been expected that authorities like Francois Fall before now would have been talking to Yaoundé and or maybe highlighting the calamity that is befallen our land. Don't you think that his public declaration could be of necessity at this time because it brings a highlight, and that's what Amazonia wants, internationalizing the struggle. Dr. Lobati.
Yeah, thank you, Paddy. I think it is we cannot say categorically that they've not been talking to La Republique in the background. Many people are talking to La Republique in the background as a sovereign nation. But as diplomacy plays its way and does its things, nobody really knows. Sorry, that's my alarm. Nobody really knows what is playing in the background. However, public statements like this is where it should have actually been right up front so that we will know. According to, let me put it, according to the international community, they feel they don't want to admit and agree that we got our independence in 1961 and therefore we were a sovereign nation. So that is where it puts us in this juxtaposed position where they deal with La Republique because he is a member of the AU, the UN, and then they are not really dealing with us in the open. Let me put it that way. So talking with Larry, bringing this in the open, maybe they just needed this little sporting event or major sporting event for Africa to be let me call it a release valve of what they may be talking in the background that we don't know. However, I think talking and condemning atrocities of that are being meted on the people of Amazonia is crucial and important. If we remember what happened in Rwanda, people stay quiet, and thousands and tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of people were massacred. And there was a big genocide, and they said, never again. But it's happening now. Where is the never again? Was it just some political rhetoric? I don't know.
I think it is mostly political because Many would think that the United Nations is sponsoring some of the genocide that is taking place. So it's just a lame, should I say, a toothless bulldog. What do you think about that? Because the United Nations is not working to avoid problem. Some will think that it comes to not even necessarily solving problems. What do you think, Mr. Ate? Can you hear me? Mr. Ate, can you hear me?
Oh, I thought you were directing the question to Dr. Lobati. Okay,
No, I'm
this
talking to
is
you.
my take. When you say the United Nations, what is the United Nations? The United Nations is an organization made up of a group of countries, some very powerful ones and some without any power whatsoever. So the United Nations doesn't usually. Okay, for instance, the Secretary General of the United Nations is just a portal through which the nations of the world, especially the dominant ones, will pass their policies, how they want the world to be. Okay, for instance, in Rwanda, when genocide was taking place, we heard about France all the time instigating that genocide. However, France is a permanent member of the Security Council. Those are some of the injustices of this world. Okay, after the Second World War, when you know when the United Nations replaced the League of Nations, the five permanent members were picked, mostly those who won the Second World War. The allies who won the Second World War became permanent seat holders in the United Nations. Can you imagine, way back from 1945 all the way to 2022, they are still the five permanent members of the Security Council. Africa has evolved from that. They have purportedly, insinuated that they have decolonized Africa. But why is Africa a continent that is actually more populated than even Europe, has no permanent seat in the Security Council? So any of those members of the permanent members of the Security Council engaging in any genocidal, atrocities around the world cannot be called by anybody in the world. That is why a country like Israel, when they, come down very, really hard on Palestinians, and the United Nations the countries of the United Nations try to write a resolution condemning them, the United States vetoes it. So same thing is happening. So that is the problem. You know what I mean? The United Nations is a toothless bulldog. But that is not an insult. It's because the United Nations is made up of countries. And the countries that sit within the United Nations, you know what I mean, are the ones who are supposed to effect any kind of change that they want in the world, including, in the problem between Cameroon and the Republic of Ambazonia. But I wouldn't blame the United Nations. I will blame the powerful countries in the world who have decided not to prevail on the dictatorial regime of Paul Biya to actually stop the violence on the people of Ambazonia. That's the way I look at it. That's the way I see it.
Yes, I think that it is an open secret that France is Cameroon's lobbyist at the United Nations Security Council. And
Protector,
that
I
is
should say.
what, well, protector, lobbyist. I would say protector. I prefer to use your word because France has an oversight, should I say an oversight or an unapologetic control to protect his interest in Africa as far as all of his former colonies, should I say former colonies or current colonies, they have just modified a lot of things and it is unfortunate. Well, let us move straight away into the discussion of today and why I had you. I just want to say thank you for choosing to come. I hope you have your constitutions there. We're getting into it. There has been chaos, particularly within the Amazonian community in the diaspora, because of an assertion that was made by the chairman of the Restoration Council about 2 years ago. Some believe it is not constitutional. Others would rather argue that even though it wasn't constitutional, but it was a resolution that was voted, and therefore there could be some form of justification. At the end of the day, we want to come to a place of balance and understanding and to derive a way forward. Amazonia is an emerging nation that whose independence has been restored and seeks or wish to be a nation of law, a nation that is law abiding, that is not fleeing from something or fleeing from a frying pan and getting into the fire. So we believe that this discussion is necessary at this time. I want to start with you, Dr. Winnie. What is your appraisal of the current document that we have as a guide to lead this nation?
Um, Thank you. I think the first thing I should say is this document was drafted, crafted, um, reviewed, and promulgated as our interim constitution. Mind you, this is not going to be, may not, and only maybe partial become our permanent constitution once we get to Boya. It's interim, which means it's a guiding document, constitution, which still we have to all abide to and uphold while we are in this revolutionary phase. So I want to say, oh gosh, I keep missing to turn it off and snoozing it. Sorry. I want to say that it is the interim constitution is what every Amazonian who is working towards our total liberation should uphold. But notwithstanding, I think you alluded to the issue of the chairman of the Restoration Council having said something. I don't think he just said something. The House actually passed when they were, let's backtrack. Post impeachment of our first president, um, Julius Ayok, who because of what the House Restoration Council considered treasonous by forming a parallel government, um, the we only had an acting president and an acting vice president. As this per this constitution, rightly, who should have been in that seat would have been a vice president who would have stepped in while we knew that they were in jail under, let me not say in jail, I would say they were abducted and detained, because that's how I still see it, illegally from Nigeria to back to La Republique. What actually did happen was we had a vice president XXX who never showed up. So that automatically created a vacancy at the helm of the executive branch. Um, with that, we had this three-man trial while we were in limbo, not understanding what had happened to them or where they were, which did not really work. And they said, okay, we can't wait on this. We will have to have an acting president. So the country and regions and the constituent assembly at the time moved forward to get three people, and then they voted and had Dr. Sako as the acting. So upon impeachment, remember, acting just meant you were holding that position and seat till the person. It's like in America, we have what we call durable power of attorney, which means somebody is acting on behalf of somebody for something. It could be for a specified duration of time, or it could be for a specific limited issue. But as acting president, he had all the powers. As president, a president, an interim president would um, execute. So he moved on with that. So after the impeachment, it left the Restoration Council scrambling through the Constitution to look for an electoral process that would have guided us. Mind you, the interim government came out of the fourth conclave, and I scratched my head. Then I was chair of the Government Affairs Committee, and I read through that whole constitution again, and I asked the chairman of the House, what happened? Because when this constitution was uh, put to the Restoration Council, where it was promulgated and ratified, signed by both.
Dr. Lobati, Paddy, can you please tell the technicians to switch our names? It's look at the
Yeah,
names.
I think they're gonna do that. That's fine.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
I said, did you guys not even think about that at any point in time we would have an election for something? He said, we all believed we were going to be home soon, and we didn't think it was going to be dragging for long. So went through that constitution, and all we could find was a little blip of some information that gave guidance. And the uh, cabinet took that little guidance and nominated a candidate who happened to have been the acting president, Dr. Sako, at the time, and brought that to the Restoration Council, and the Restoration Council did vote on that. Per se, we thought it was not a good thing that if we have to keep something should happen in the future, that we don't have a way of putting in a new executive head of the interim government. So it will be wise that we have some modalities for an electoral process. If you look into that, yes, you may say it's not stated in the Constitution. Yes, that's true. But that was something for us to all, both the Restoration Council, the constituencies, the Ambazonia people, to look into this and recognize that we had a problem and we needed to fix this. For what we don't know how long it would take us before we finally settle in Boya. What if something were to happen to our current executives? Are we going to go back again to the cabinet, or go back only to the Restoration Council? Mind you, we are not going to have sovereign election at this time in when we are at war, and it clearly states that in the Constitution when that would take place. So, how do we want to handle this? Do we want to keep letting a few people do this process all the time? So when the Restoration Council um, passed that and got President Sako from acting into interim, they said 2 years. So this was a 2 year period we should have been having this discussion and putting that modality in place. Apparently, we have not yet done that, and we should be doing it, and we should be talking about it.
Okay, thank you very much for that analogy. If I understand you very clearly, you are of the opinion that a categoric and electoral democracy campaigning and whatsoever is not what should be permitted at this time, but there should be provision in an eventuality where the president drops dead or is impeached. We should have a way of getting a replacement. Am I correct?
I'm partially correct. We should be able, we're not going to do what we're calling, let me put it this way. If you're looking at campaigning, yes, probably campaigning. But what I'm saying is, it should not be left in the hands of a few Amazonians to always make this decision. We should have some inclusivity of the constituent members of what we have now to have a say as to who they would want for a president in case such an eventuality were happening again. So this discussion opened us up to see, should we be amending this constitution, and that the Restoration Council feels that we should have an amendment, and rightly so. Who is responsible for calling that constituent assembly for an amendment? It is the president
Okay.
per our current
Mr. Eric,
constitution.
before we move forward, I want you to react to that analogy.
Well, I just want to say something here. The Constitution is usually a very static document. It is also ideological in a sense. But if you want to treat it as a static base law of the land, you will see that that oath of office was totally illegal and unconstitutional. It doesn't matter the circumstances. The reason why I say that, if one were to ask, let's say, a member of the Restoration Council to read the oath of office of the president embedded in the Constitution, does it reflect what Cometa read? It doesn't. It doesn't reflect what Cometa read. Let me give you an example of something that happened in 2008 when Barack Obama was elected president during his first inauguration. The Chief Justice of the United States came on and read the oath of office. Unfortunately, he decided not to hold a piece of paper, and he didn't read it right. He made some mistakes. Instead of saying, I, Barack Obama, something like that, I will execute the office of the President of the United States. He said, I will execute faithfully. So it was botched. He didn't say it right. You know what happened? Immediately, Barack Obama didn't stand there and argue with the Chief Justice of the United States that, hey, you know what, you read the oath wrong. He didn't do that. And President Sarkozy shouldn't have done that either. But Barack Obama knew that the Constitution was on his side and that the Chief Justice of the United States made a mistake. What did they do? They came back into the White House after the inauguration, and they went into the diplomatic room in the White House, and they redid the oath of office for Barack Obama. I think that's the first time it's been done, except for Gerald Ford, who was actually sworn in the White House after Nixon resigned. So you see, constitutionality always takes precedence. Like I said, let any member of the Restoration Council or Ambazonian whatsoever, any Ambazonian, tell me if the oath of office sanctioned by the Constitution and stated in the Constitution is right there, the oath of office of the President and Vice President. Tell me if what Chairman Cometa read that day while swearing in the President reflects the oath that is in this Constitution. I'm not going to sit here and say Dr. Lobati is completely wrong. You know what I mean? Because those were very difficult circumstances. We were coming out from the pain of losing our president to abduction. He was adopted. So, but you know what? That doesn't negate the fact that no individual or group of people have the right to change the Constitution and stuff like that. The president has made it very clear. Back in November, when the president's office was purportedly, the president's term of office was purportedly supposed to be to end, the Judicial Council wrote a letter to the Restoration Council stating the constitutionality of cutting the president's mandate in November, and we are now in January. So what has the president said? That let's start the conversation. I think the Restoration Council should work with the executive branch of government, as Dr. Lobati rightly said, and so the president can appoint a constitutional review committee from all walks of life, all tiers of government, so they can review some amendments that could be affected on this, in this, if it can be made to this basic document that we have called the Constitution. And after that, a constituent assembly will, because we are not putting, we should try to always remember that we went to Berlin and decentralized our government. So people of the local government and counties also have a say. So after this constitutional review committee does its work, it was sending out to the Constituent Assembly made up of all these local government and county executives and representatives, including members of the Restoration Council and also members of the executive, the cabinet, the office of the president, everyone, every stakeholder. And then after all is said and done, that would be, you know what I mean, that could be ruled like as though the people of Ambazonia have actually endorsed that amendment to the Constitution. That is not the end of it. Then we send it to the Restoration Council, which is the legislative body of our land, for promulgation. Because the Restoration Council does not pass laws, does not make laws. They pass bills, they promulgate, constitutional amendments. When they promulgate it, they sign it, and they send it to the president. And the president signs it, and the amendment has been effected with broad-based consultation. I think that's the way to go. So Dr. Lobati is not completely wrong, but what I'm trying to say is that, does what the Constitution say, takes precedence, or is it what Chairman Kometa read? So if that is if you look at it, you will say what he read was totally unconstitutional. You know what I mean? Because it didn't reflect.
Okay.
There's an
Eric, you just mentioned something about the decentralization of our government. And in Berlin, some believe that was also an unconstitutional behavior to decentralize. Interpreting the laws of the land, the constitution. How do we want to defend this? Because it was mostly initiated and sponsored by the executive branch of government. Was there, from your understanding, was there a proper consultation between the various arms? I'm talking about the legislature and the executive. Because some believe that what happened in Berlin was not constitutional. Dr. Lobati, you're going to react to that, but I want to hear what Eric Ate has to say because he just brought that up.
Okay, this is what I'm going to say. What happened? Berlin is some form of a constituent assembly, just like we're going to be having Berlin 2 in Washington in March. The organizing committee is going to come out and say, hey, you know what? All tiers of government, everyone, every stakeholder will come together, and then we will try to discuss things that will better manage our revolution. When you say Berlin was unconstitutional, let me say this. It's just like saying that the executive orders of the president are unconstitutional. No, they are not, because it clearly states in the Constitution that the president will have the right to pass executive orders and should be treated as law. So when the people of Ambazonia come together in a big conference, very representative, and they decide to make some structural changes to our government to better prosecute our revolution. You know what I mean? And then
structural changes, different
structural
from
changes.
So go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, those structural changes are administrative changes. For instance, let me ask you something. When there was an attack on 9/11 in the United States, George Bush decided to create the Department of Homeland Security, right? He created that department, but that department it was his responsibility to protect the nation. So he decided to create the department, and then Congress endorsed it, and it was passed, and they gave them their functions and terms of references. So Berlin was not something unique just to the executive branch of government. The Restoration Council themselves were there, and even within the construct of that conference in Berlin, It was also stated that the current leadership in the Restoration Council, their mandate will end in October, if I'm not mistaken. Are they gone? Why is the chairman still the chairman of the Restoration Council? It was also said that we will constitute ourselves in our LGS and county structures, and then the representatives from the local governments and counties will come into the Restoration Council, and they will elect, certain members of certain bureaus within the RC, and also conduct an election to elect their chairman. So, if you look at it critically, you cannot be someone who is not supposed to be in office right now, and then you are trying to change somebody else. The Restoration Council's mandate, based on Berlin, ended in October. The chairman Kometa is not supposed to be the chairman of the Restoration Council. Even Ms. Lobati sitting right here, Dr. Lobati, knows what I'm talking about. So that's why I say, what I mean, it's kind of complicated. Let's go back and look at our constitution and amend it in such a way that it will suit everybody. It will make everybody comfortable. Like right now, some people are clamoring to be president, using some of these holes within our system to unseat the president. It's wrong. Constitutions should not be changed to please one person. Laws should not be made to please or to dishonor one person. It should be an effort that uplifts all. So if anybody says that, Berlin was was unconstitutional, well, I don't know. They should bring forth the argument. But from what I know,
Dr.
based on
Lobati,
Berlin,
please. I want you to
based on
quickly
that law,
react to
hold on,
that.
based on that law, the current leadership of the Restoration Council should not be there. But they are there, and let's work together. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Lobati, please.
Let me put it this way. I think I disagree with the fact that the Berlin Conference superseded the Constitution. Chapter 5 of the Constitution clearly states that the Restoration Council, let me read it, Article 14. The Restoration Council shall be composed of 23 members, constituted as follows: 11 members that made the defunct Governing Council, 8 additional members representing Ambazonia diaspora and distributed as follows: 1 Africa, 2 America, 3 Europe, 1 Canada, 1 Asia, Middle East, and 1 diaspora. Then at sub 1C say, the Restoration Council may periodically, in response to changing circumstances, review and adjust its membership to ensure a more effective and balanced representation of the people of Amazonia. Such action shall be promulgated by no less than two-thirds majority vote of its sitting members in the formal session. The rest, number 2 of that Article 14, the Restoration Council shall, during the interim period, serve partially as the quasi legislature. So, Berlin Conference, as it may have been, may have come out with recommendations. But the Restoration Council already had the constitutional power to make adjustments, and they did. They did expand the Restoration Council, I think twice, before even Berlin's council. So it did not end only with what was stated. Then they adjusted. The problem that ensued with the Restoration Council was the fact that post Berlin Conference, those recommendations to many Amazonians felt that it was automatically the Constitution. And so they wanted to unseat every member of the Restoration Council and only put the LGA members that they thought were right. And it is unconstitutional if that was the approach when we did not, while this constitution states what it states as such. The Restoration Council initiated a process of expansion, but experienced some pushback from the LGAs and the counties. But before I say something, let me say some things. Let's hold that thought for a moment. The Constitution also did allow for the creations of LGAs and counties. It is stated. I wish I knew this was coming. I would have quoted and given you the exact page. And then
That
the
that's
Constitution,
fine. It's gonna be a
page,
series, and we will
yeah,
definitely come back to progress in this discussion.
page um page 49 of the Constitution, ratification and promulgation. This constitution was formally ratified by the legislature, the Restoration Council, on April 17, 2018. Any future changes must be ratified by the Restoration Council. And if you go in the terms of reference of the Restoration Council, it states how that will have to take place. And that part of that two-thirds majority of that, it's not only going to be for the Restoration Council. Remember, for an amendment to occur, all the constituent assembly of the different aspects of Ambazonia will have to have a say. There is a process of how constitutional amendments have to take place, and which means there's a constitutional committee set to look into the amendments, and there's a publication for to that amendments, and there is then the president calls a constituent a constituent assembly. The people look at it. If two-thirds agree to that, then they send it to the Restoration Council. If the one changes happen during the time when it's public for comments. So there is a process for all that to take place. However, to say that the mandate of the Restoration Council members expired October, well, is problematic to that effect, because the recommendations that came out of the Berlin conference were recommendations that most of them push into policy making of the functionality of our LGAs and counties, as were stated already, allowed within the constitution for their creation. And also it allowed the um, for us to make changes appropriately when needed, for even when we add departments. We will go into some of those later. But when the when we had this pushback of how the Restoration Council wanted the balance, the pushback came because the people who went to Berlin felt that this constitution is really out the window now. Berlin conference is the constitution. That was the misunderstanding. And those of us who kind of have a constitutional mind, we said no. And believe it or not, the APP plan and structure is what was the crux of the matter that started looking at this constitution and felt that it was illegal, or it was the APP plan overseeded the constitution. And why they did not realize is, if a policy or even an executive order violates the constitution has to be upheld, which is why DCAP is saying that there is nothing that said presidential mandate. If I may say, the mandate of continuity on ground zero by this interim constitution is 3 years of setting offices in Adboya. That is what is clearly stated. But the question I will ask Mr. Eric is, what if we are dragging in this space? God forbid, I don't want that. If we drag in
Nobody,
this,
nobody even dares. I feel that we should be in Boya next week. So nobody even
Now,
wants to talk.
yesterday we should have already been in both.
But let her answer the question. I would like to answer.
And
Yeah.
what if this drags on for the next 10 years, the next 20 years, and things happen?
Okay.
And
Do
things
we
happen.
want
I
to?
like that. That was part of the question I was going to ask you,
But
and you
let
have
her
made
just
me
finish the
to
question,
flee
buddy.
away from something you said that I wanted to ask. But Mr. Eric, let's answer this. If I
Did you,
understand Dr.
are you done
Winnie's,
with your question?
just a moment. Let me add
No,
something here with Dr. Winnie's question. If Are you done with it? Are you done with it, Dr. Winnie?
not quite. Not quite.
Okay,
What if
finish it.
things
Finish.
happen?
I'll add something so that
If
you
things
respond to it.
happen, we never thought we would be in this thing for 5, 6 years. We thought we were going to be there in 2 years and 3 years transition phase, because the constitution also provides for that transition period. And okay, we drag on 10 years, 15 years, as we have seen other revolutions lasted, or other problems with other nations, whether it's South Sudan or whether it was
Liberation movement. Yeah.
Liberia, or yes. Do we want to continuously leave a little blurb in the constitution to be the way forward of choosing a president, the executive branch? Mind you, I'm not saying ground zero. Ground zero is not in a safe place now that they can really actually carry out elections. There is also mention how that would take place once we get to ground zero. But the question I would ask Mr. Ate is, do you want to let a few people? Remember what Secretary Chris said on ABC before he went to form ABS, that oh, the cabinet is not functional, the this is not this, and there is problem left and right, up and down, this and that. Who do you want to let a few people in the cabinet, if things were needed, to be the ones to select an Amazonian and come and present them to the Restoration Council? Or do you want to have a process where the voice of Constituent Assembly can have a say as to how we proceed in case we do need
In
the
an
new president?
eventuality,
Exactly.
where things are
Before
not
you come in,
working.
buddy,
So
let me respond to
let
her.
me add something so before you go, Mr. Eric
Can I
Ate.
respond to her before you add your own?
Okay, go ahead.
The reason why I say that is because I just want to make some correction here. What the last question that she asked is, do you want? No, I don't. I have always said that that is not my call, and that is not what I advocate as a citizen. Let's go back to Berlin. What I was saying is that what a bunch of people sit down and discuss and come up with doesn't change the Constitution. The Constitution is the foundation. When I made allusions to the fact that the mandate of the current Restoration Council expired in October, Dr. Labati would agree with me that it was agreed upon. There was a document that was signed in Berlin. Okay, if that document is unconstitutional because Berlin doesn't supersede the Constitution, why is it that some would think that a few individuals will just sit and change the oath of office that is embedded in the Constitution, giving the president 2 year mandate is constitutional? That is why I made that statement. It wasn't because I felt like Berlin supersedes the Constitution. Nothing, no law in Ambazonia, or no assertion, no statement made by anyone or group of people will ever replace the Constitution. So let's go back to the Restoration Council. The Restoration Council is the legislative body of our country right now. They are there to pass bills for the president to sign it into law. However, the president also has the right to effect and to issue executive orders. But even he, the president, knows that his executive orders cannot be unconstitutional. Because any ordinary Ambazonian would tell him that, Mr. President, your executive order is unconstitutional. But when the president passes an executive order within the context of reorganizing our administrative structures, it is constitutional because the Constitution itself gives him the power as the chief of executive to manage the executive branch of government. So we are both correct, Dr. Lubati and I. But the premise that, a few people in the Restoration Council will try to sit down and celebrate and connive with some certain, recalcitrant and members of the executive, and to just impose a mandate on the current president is wrong. The bottom line is we as a people, we should all, within the context of, making sure that any amendments to the Constitution is something that is broad-based, and that we have made those consultations, and brought in people who are actually within the LGS and the counties, the Restoration Council, the executive branch of government, all the stakeholders. That is the right way to go. So I think the Restoration Council should work with the executive branch of government to start that, to begin that process. But right now, any talk about presidential mandate is out of the window. You know why? Because there is an oath of office within the Constitution. My question was to Dr. Lobati, the oath of office that is embedded in the Constitution is the oath of office of the President of Ambazonia. Any other oath of office that was read is unconstitutional and should not be followed.
Okay,
So
I agree
that's
with you,
what
Comrade Eric. This is my agreement with you. You're trying to be strict to censor when interpreting this constitution, which is, I think, is honorable. But this is the concern Dr. Lobati brought in, which I wanted to enforce on, so you could throw in some light. Dr. Lobati is, from my perspective, is a visionary. She does not want to be comfortable with the current situation. She is looking ahead of time. And she's saying that in an eventuality that our president drops dead or becomes incapacitated or becomes compromised, because you cannot define a human nature, or presents a conduct that could lead to an impeachment as stipulated by the Constitution. Are we going to start grappling on what to do, or we should have a process as to how the people will representatively decide who takes over office? Am I
Thank
mistaken,
you.
Dr. Lubat?
Can I answer that?
You are absolutely correct.
Okay.
What I'm calling, which is what I think. Let me say something. I think with this happened in November of 2019. COVID has started ravaging in Asia, and so we have been dealing with COVID. In 2020, we were actually supposed to have had an all Amazonian conference again, but with the COVID, nothing happened. I think what we really need to start looking at is how do we need amendments in our constitution that are right for a revolutionary phase, that is safe, and that will keep the revolution intact. You just mentioned this issue of what if the president and his vice all went and La République or France cornered them and gave them something, and we found out, and then pep, we pushed both of them out, because you will say the constitution say in case there is no president, the vice president takes over. But what if both of them connived and then they were compromised, and or even acted treasonously and were both kicked out? Are we going to start grappling again? How much are we going to know who is in that cabinet that they have that is also compromised? And who are they going to be
Yeah.
presenting to us that is uncompromised? So we need to, as Ambazonians, objectively look at our interim constitution and fill the gaps with amendments that really can help us and set our stage in case we are in this thing for a long haul.
Okay.
Thank you.
Buddy,
You
you
want to
were trying
react
to
to that?
ask me a question. You were trying
Yeah,
to
go
ask me a
ahead, Comrade
question.
Eric. Yeah,
And
go
then
ahead.
let me say this: there is nothing that uh, Comrade Lubati has said that is out of place. So I don't want this thing to be misconstrued as though I'm a strict constructionist. Like I just want to go by the letter of the book. This, I would want amendments to the Constitution as we go. Constitutions are amended to sharpen
Amendable.
it. Yeah, they
Yes.
are amendable. It is, but the thing is, while we are trying to amend the Constitution, we cannot shit on the present Constitution. That is my problem.
That's
If we
agreed.
are going to amend the Constitution, then I say the president should call for a constitutional review body that reviews the prospects of that amendment, and then we go to the Constituent Assembly that will be constituted by every stakeholder. The modalities will be set. It could be that the president will say, okay, or the Resolution Council can also suggest and say, hey, let all the LGS and the counties and everything, let everybody come together. And this amendment could also include, the functions of the counties and the LGS and everything. It could contain our entire structure, an overhaul of our entire structure. As long as there is no amendment as of yet, the constitution that we have should be respected. That is what I am saying. I'm not saying that amendments should not be made. It should. But what I'm saying is that if anybody in the Restoration Council is trying to use what Chairman Kometa read to the president, it's wrong, because there is
Okay.
an oath of office
Comrade
in the
Eric,
Constitution,
you have
and what
emphasized
he
on
said
that.
doesn't replace the Constitution. That's what I said.
Comrade Eric, you've emphasized on that. Um, I would say enough for now. But this is something I want to say. And you have also said, I want to use your words now to ask a question to Dr. Winnie so that we can investigate how this thing goes. You have said a couple of times, Comrade Eric, that due to that declaration by chairman of the Restoration Council 2 years ago, which we all agree it was unconstitutional, though Dr. Lebati would want to argue it was a convenience. We were grappling here and there. That is our argument. You have said it as we were drawing closer to November purported elections, the conduct of cabinet members changed. Some were not seeing anything good about all the efforts that were collectively made. And there has no doubt been recalcitrance in subordination. And it becomes difficult even for the president to place sanctions or discipline, owing to the fact that it's difficult for us to enforce law either by a police or whatever right now. So you have people that are volunteers and anybody can talk nonsense. We know the current issue that has provoked a lot in Ambazonia. I would say, though some are seeing this as being chaotic, but this is a blessing because today we're having this discussion. What the Restoration Council, what has the Restoration Council done or is helping to do to make sure that those who are given the privilege to serve, even at the level of the legislature, can show some conduct of civility and respect? I'm talking to you, Dr. Lobati. We know, I don't want to call names. I'm trying as much not to call names, but you know behaviors that are recalcitrant, outright disrespect, not civil, not gentlemanly. We're trying to simulate the British and perhaps the Americans, but we have seen terrible misconduct from those who are supposed to be statesmen. Dr. Lobati, please.
Paddy, if I may say, if there is a saying that says ignorant before the law is no excuse, means that if you're doing something that is you're breaking a law and you didn't know, you can just go plead your guilty. A good example would be you're driving in an unfamiliar area and you exceed the speed limit that you didn't know that because you had not noticed the speed sign, and a police pulls you up. You cannot claim ignorance to say you did not break the law. Yes, you broke the law, even though you were ignorant about what the speed sign that was posted was there. So you still have to pay your charges, or if you have a kind police officer who is the officer to enforce, he might give you a warning and let you go. But let me go to Article 2 of our Constitution on page 25. I call this the the must of our Constitution. It's just my labeling of that. I would like to read it. To be honest, I may like to show this is what I use. I have a copy of the Constitution with tabs everywhere. So I read this thing as much. It's the working one, and I have a clean copy just in case somebody were to ask me. I can send them or scan them and send them a clean copy, but it's online. This document has been in public domain for a long time, and I'm glad we are making the Amazonian people go know what their rights and what their constitution says, and their obligations as well, and what they should expect, and who should preserve their rights, and what the obligations of the executive branch, the responsibilities of both all the institutions of our government. That is a beautiful thing, that we have an educated population about what they know or what their constitution stand. I will say article this is founding provisions, article 2, page 25. I call these the must. Subsection 1c, responsiveness, cooperative government, and accountability. The interim government shall ensure responsiveness to the will of the people through public consultations on issues that require direct input of the people. The interim government and all organs of state must preserve the peace. They must provide effective, transparent, accountable, and coherent government for the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. They must also cooperate with one another in mutual trust and good faith by assisting and supporting one another, by fostering friendly relations, by informing one another and consulting one another on matters of common interest, by coordinating their actions with one another, and by adhering to agreed procedures. So, it is incumbent on all the branches of the government for us to uphold this for the sake of our people and as stated in the Constitution. What what we are in effect both agreeing is that we need an amendment to our Constitution. And one of the areas that the Restoration Council has found that is lacking is the area of electoral process. I am sure if you go to the executive branch, they will also have areas that they will think. I'm sure if you reach out to the LGAs, the counties, they will also have areas. I'm sure if you speak to the ethics commission, they may also want something to be added that would state some ethical standard that is common across the board for every officer of the interim government. So in now we have, in the spirit of this law of the must, cooperate, consult, collaborate on matters of common interest to preserve the peace and to move on and work on agreed procedure. I think this is where we should stand. We should start what is needed. This conversation is starting. It should not be one of tearing down. It should not be one of destroying one arm of the government or the other. Let me put it. Many of our people think that the interim government is only the executive branch. which is a misnomer, and which is
Yeah.
what we have to educate our people. The interim government has three basically arms. The Judiciary Commission, at this time, in my understanding of the interim government, really even falls to assist the cabinet, falls under the presidency and assist the president with a lot of bills and other things. But the Ethics Commission is a standalone institution, and in standing alone they have their responsibility. And the reason why the Judiciary Commission is that way is because we don't have the court system in our control, because we are
If
not
it
on the court.
matters.
And so if we were in Boya, they will automatically have to separate themselves. And somebody will say it's not mentioned in the constitution, but it will
It is.
behoove anybody to realize that we need to state that, even if we make amendments, that as soon as we get to Boya, the judiciary should be a standalone. That's something I'm just identifying that needs to be stated in an amendment in our constitution, so that they can start working and doing things as once they take the courts systems in their hands. But the Restoration Council, as a legislative body, is one arm of the government. The Ethics Commission, the executive branch. And under the executive branch really is the one that carries the day-to-day activity that you see out there, engaging the LGAs, the counties. The legislative branch is indirectly, it's a way that the voices of the people are heard in matters, by a few, let me put them, because we cannot really fully say fully elected officials, because we are not conducting election in the way of suffrage. This is within what we have in the framework we have in the procedures that we had. You remember I read you how the Restoration Council, its composition, how that happened. And in that, believe it or not, people don't realize there are frontline movements that should be having seats, that have seat in the Restoration Council. If they choose to send their rep, they are free to send a rep per our constitution. If they don't, it just remains vacant. So what we are saying, and what we are all agreeing for, what I am saying is that this constitution needs some working by having an amendment, and we should not be fighting over it, but we should rather be collaborating and working on what aspects of this constitution need, or what amendments do we want to include in this interim constitution until the time that we have an a, a, a full constitution. And mind you, once we get to Boya, based on even this interim constitution, once a full constitution is drawn up, they have the right, based on this interim constitution, to adopt things from this constitution, or to throw it all out and put in a completely new constitution that will be follow the same process of publicizing it, drafting it, publicizing it, waiting for comments, putting a constituent assembly for all this to be done. So what I am literally saying, and what DCAP is, Mr. Ate is saying, is that we both are agreeing that some level of amendment needs to happen on this constitution. Um, Per se, Decap, I would disagree on one thing. There was nothing that stated that the 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 term of the Restoration Council is is supposed to have ended in October. I think I know
No, no,
where
no, no.
that.
Jacob was referencing Berlin. He was actually
No, it
referencing
was
Berlin.
not.
So we don't need so much time.
Let,
He's
let,
not
let,
talking
Yes,
let
about
her
yes, I
October.
know.
finish. Let her finish.
Yes, yes. I want to. Yes, I know he was referencing Berlin, and like you say, you cannot cherry pick what you want in the constitution and throw out what what you don't like. You have to embody it, and these are good discussions and divergent opinions of looking through the lenses of somebody, or hearing somebody else say something differently, but then we come up, I wish we had your other panelist who is uh, a lawyer by
Barrister Ghana,
profession.
I,
Yes,
I want to
unfortunately,
apologize. Yeah,
yeah,
I want to apologize
unfortunately, he
because
is not
it's
here.
too early
He
for
would
him
have answered.
to be doing.
Can I
Yeah, go
respond
ahead.
to something? Dr. Lobati,
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Eric.
when I mentioned Berlin, it is to say that, you know, some people say Berlin, maybe Berlin was the constitution. Berlin was not the constitution. Berlin was a series of proposals that were given. So I was also equating Berlin, the assertions of Berlin, that the term of office of some members of the Regional Council will be over in October. I was referencing Berlin and equating it to the sensational remarks made by the chairman of the Regional Council, which was unconstitutional. What I was saying is that one cannot sit in the Restoration Council and try to say, because for instance, a member of your council sat here on this TV the other day, I think it was Sango, Mr. Sango or something, I don't know,
Sango Louis
yeah,
Etongwe.
and said, you know, the fact that the president did not protest when Cometa read that oath of office, that means it's law. Paddy, am I wrong? Did he say that? He
Yeah, it
insinuated
says it's
that
law abiding.
that it's law abiding. So what I was trying to say is that if people gathered in Berlin and they discuss things and they say, okay, you know what, this thing is going to come in effect, or you know, the current leadership, your mandate will be over in October, and all the LGS will now send their representatives, and that's just people talking. That particular talk, if it doesn't replace the constitution, why does the chairman's statement replace the constitution? That is why I brought you back to the constitution by saying there is an oath of office in the constitution. The Constitution, the oath of office that is read today, that was read to Joe Biden today, is the same oath of office that was read to George Washington. I just made an example that when Barack Obama was president, the Supreme Court judge, the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, read the oath of office. He didn't change it, but he made some errors because he wasn't reading. He thought he was smart enough to have crammed the document, but he made some errors. Obama didn't. Obama grinched. Like everybody knew that he made an error. I knew it because I watched it. But what did he do? He went back to the Oval Office and read the right one. So even our oath of office is embedded in the Constitution, and if a member of the Restoration Council is within within the Restoration Council coming on national TV and saying the president agreed to it, that means it's law. That is the height of ignorance. That's what I said. So Dr. Lobati and I are on the same page. We need an amendment to our constitution in order to effect the proper functioning of our system now, in the future, and we have to come together and amend parts of the constitution that we think will actually bring forth a better system for us and for our posterity. We have to do it. So that's what I was saying. So I agree with her that we have to do that. And there is no disagreement in that.
Yeah,
But
so
anything
these
that
are
is in the
the
Restoration Council right now, trying to talk about election, throw it out. That's nonsense. It's unconstitutional. Let them just let that go. Because you know what? It started from when Comesta made that mistake. He had no right to institute elections in Ambazonia. No, he had no right to do that. Let's amend the constitution. And if we have the modalities and the amendments all in place, you think the president, even I would tell the president, Mr. President, you cannot run away from an election. It's right there. Let's do the amendments first before we start talking about it. So now what is happening, like you said something about the cabinet, because of what Comrade Cometa did, it created a lot of problems in the executive branch of government. People started seeing fault in everything. People started creating loyalties because they thought the president's term of office would be over in November. All this chaos that you see comes from what he said during the presidential inauguration. So when people make sensational remarks, they should understand that it has consequences. It could actually derail our progress. So don't just go out and make and just like what Sango said. If I was on that show, I would have challenged him. How can Sango say, a member of the Restoration Council, somebody who is supposed to know, how can a lawmaker not know the law? How can you say something that somebody says is the law because the other person didn't reject it? So if the president stood up today and said, or during the inauguration, somebody stood up and said, Mr. President, put your hand up. I, Dr. Samuel Ikomes Sako, do solemnly swear that I'm going to cut off the head of every woman. Is that law? Are you kidding me? No. The Constitution should be followed. That nonsense that Komeka did is wrong, and we should throw it out. So now what are they doing? Those people who embrace the notion that the president's term of office will be over, what are they doing now? They are now in the Restoration Council testifying and trying to bring treasonous charges against the president. They thought his term of office will be over. They're not going to get it. So what are they trying to do now? Connive with certain members of the Restoration Council to find something that is not there in order to impeach the president. And that's why the president said, put everything in writing. Everything, give it to the Judicial Council, to the Ethics Commission, and the Restoration Council. Those accusers, those people who make all those accusations on the president, let them put everything in writing and sign it and even notarize it. The president lives in the United States. If you're accusing him of, I went, and like I told you the other day, Paddy, I just went to buy furniture the other day. I took out my debit card, not credit card. I gave it. They ran $12,000. My bank called me that what is going on? Even though it's my money, how can they say the president, somebody paid him $200,000 in America? There is no way you can pay anybody in America where you can trace it. It's a lie. So let them put those accusations in writing. Because when people go on national TV, on their platform, and they make those kind of blatant statements, it's defamation of character. So let them put it in writing. And if they refuse to put it in writing, notarize it, and sign it, and give it to the Restoration Council and the Ethics Commission, so we can bring the president in to release all his accounts, then they should be held accountable for trying to destroy this revolution with lies. Because I have talked to the president myself. I said, Mr. President, I serve at your pleasure, but I'm going to tell you something. I want to ask you, is there any truth to this? Because if there is, and you don't tell me, I will go against you tomorrow if I find out it was true. And the president said, Eric Atte, you are my director of cabinet, you can take it to the bank. It's all false. So what I'm saying is that those members of the Restoration Council who have connived with some certain members of the executive branch of government to bring down the president should prevail on those recalcitrant members of government to write everything and put it in writing. I want those accusations so that not only the public opinion of Ambazonia will judge that case, but I want the laws of the United States to also judge, because the president is also a citizen of the United States. And if you're accusing him of money laundering, of anything,
that's felony.
Let it go to court. And if they don't produce that signed document, I swear to God, the Restoration Council should throw everything out and kick them out, because that is dishonest. That is just my opinion.
Malobati, I wanted to say something. I would like you to react to that, please.
The first thing I should say is Mr. Kometa did not put that 2-year mandate on his own accord. That was deliberated by the Restoration Council. And like I said, the intention was that within the 2 year, because what was stated, even in the letter publishing that we had a new president, it said that
Dr. Lobati, please. Dr. Lobati, I'm not cutting you short. It was a good intention, but not a very good precedence. Will I be right to interpret it that way?
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
That modalities for electoral process would be taken. Let me not say probably will be put in place in 2 years. Have we put that in place?
No.
The answer is no. So then you have a leg to stand on that we haven't put it in place. Can we start working on putting that in place? Yes. But does that mean that because we are working on it, it means that the president is out, the government stops? No. It's a discussion and a process. Even
A
amending the
necessary discussion.
constitution, even amending the constitution does not take overnight. It's not a 1 or 2 session of the Restoration Council and voila, a constitution is amended. No, it will take a little while. So we should all understand that. And that's why when the Restoration Council put that 2 year, they were they were hoping that we would have had this process within over a 2 year plan to get that amendment. But unfortunately, we never really worked on it. Nobody looked into it because the letter of announcing the president was actually public to the people of Amazonia, and it carried that term. So Mr. Kometa as chair was only echoing the position of the Restoration Council at the time and not his own making. So don't blame the chairman alone. You're literally saying, hey, the
Yeah.
Restoration Council, whatever you did, okay, let's look in the Constitution. Where does it say term limits? Because that's where, if we have an electoral process, we'll say, what's our term? Do we have term limits? And when is it applicable? Can we waive a term limit? And under what conditions should we waive a term limit in a revolutionary phase? We can look at all those things and include those things so that it allows us the elasticity
Elasticity
within
to function.
to function, but still be within the banks of our river of the Constitution without going about. A good example would be even addition of and expanding, creating new departments, which I have had this conversation with Mr. Ate. So, hey, the Constitution actually says if a new department or new are created, it should come back to the Restoration Council and that bill should be tabled so we can do things right. So our goal is we all want to uphold this constitution. We all want to move forward, but in doing so, we are not stopping. We are not freezing everything just so that the revolution comes to an end, or we tear everything down because one thing is broken. You don't go throw out everything out of your house because or out of your cabinet. You don't throw all your china out because one glass was broken. You may be a rich person that say, hey, because I don't have enough of, I needed 24 of this and I only have 23, I'll throw everything out. Maybe you are that rich to do that. But no, we don't throw everything out of our house because one thing is broken or one thing is spoiled. No, we look at, can we repair this? Can we fix this? And can we move on as a people or as a family?
I like what
Okay,
you said, but
buddy,
there's something you have
can I
missed
just
out.
come in
Please,
there for a second?
please, Comrade Eric, just a moment, please. You have missed out on something which I want you to react. Mr. Eric Ate has highlighted recalcitrant, I would say treasonous behavior coming from the executive branch. And it would appear that the, the Restoration Council has have some members who has who probably, I'm trying to locate a word that is decent, that would, but I would say they have probably dipped their hands into some nasty waters. There have been audios of, I would say, honorary members or honorable members of the Restoration Council acting as lobbyists, which is unfortunate. In decency, it is very clear from what we get, intelligence from the Restoration Council, that there is a bias. And this bias has been enhanced from the cabinet. Now, reacting to what I've just said and what Erika has said, don't you think that the Restoration Council is taking some things lightly? And that's why the president would say that um, we are the Restoration Council might not be able to handle the current crisis. I'm talking to you, Dr. Labati.
Okay, let me put it this way. There is a process of resolving dispute and issues within our, um, let me say, within our government. And that is clearly put upon the not only intergovernmental but also interdepartmental, intragovernmental, which also would include even interinstitutional. It is the ethics commission. um, there are things that should rightly, I would say, rightly have gone to the ethics commission, became and after they could have exhausted those other, let me say, other ways of resolving issues before it could have come up to the Restoration Council. Granted, it was not done that way because one candidate felt that the person laying the complaint felt that the ethics commission was going to be biased. However, talking about, and so he brought it to the Restoration Council. Let me put that on a pause. But talking about members, the Restoration Council does have, we have house rules and regulations. We have our internal ethics committee, and we've had leaks also out of the Restoration Council. A good example, you know it, Mr. Ate, and you know it, Paddy, how whatever a committee held its meeting, and the recording of that meeting left out of the Restoration Council to the executive branch. We're going to delve into looking into all that. Granted, anything you accuse somebody as an allegation is an allegation until proven. And I will put this in a way: if you say I went to Walmart and I stole um, a TV because I was walking by the TV and I looked at the TV, touched it, and the cameras of Walmart saw me touching those TV. And because you saw me on that camera touching those TV, you immediately assume that I stole that TV without even seeing that TV, me carrying out, passing out without even making some payment of that, whether it be it online, whether I was just picking it up or going through the cashier or whatever, and you assume that without knowing the truth and not even seeing that TV in my car. That will make, I will call it just an allegation. You will have to prove your case. And you have to prove your case of to the fact that I stole a TV. But if you present an allegation and nothing is found in that allegation, and you want to push it on everybody on the Restoration Council, let me tell you, people are smart. They will ask questions. Even if something comes out of it, committees are granted. Committees are there to work on projects and assignment of the House, and then they bring it and table it to the General Assembly of the House, and then the House will review and take or reject some of the committee's recommendation. It is not cut cow dry because a committee said so, that is it. And therefore, let's put it this way: they just, whatever is being looked into at this moment or are put out there, because I'm sure it's already on social media, it's an allegation. My fear and my greatest concern is not that we have freedom of press, but it's that we have activists, surrogacy, trying to determine the process, procedure, and execution and functioning of the government in their
But
frame mind
but
of
but,
activism
but
and
that is
surrogacy.
tolerated by members of the Restoration Council. Like I said, I don't make public declarations if I've not done my underground investigation. For instance, I'll give you an example. You've had certain activists that will go on their pages and they would say, I just called members of the Restoration Council and this is what they have to say. That I know they do that with an intention to sell their narrative to the vulnerable public that we have. And our people have been seriously manipulated. We have people who are contesting moment of truth that are brought on TV. But I was provoked to bring moment of truth on TV because of the manipulation, the misinformation, and the disinformation of our public. Members of our department, I would say most of whom, not all, most of whom, some are just being objective and honest and they want peace. But some I have diagnosed are individuals who actually have an interest or have interest in the public litigation process that was being conducted by the activists. So they wanted us to stay quiet and to have this government destroyed or this cabinet or this president down. Also, what I decoded was the fact that even when the president decided to react, you accuse a man and you categorically don't want the man to respond. So I'm saying all of this to bring you back to the point that there are members of the Restoration Council, even in the leak audio, that were surprisingly excited and said they're going to end the term of the president even before the 31st of December. They were just so excited. It's like, and my understanding is Mr. Arno fabricated some of the problems and forced his way into the Restoration Council because of these individuals and to lead to a process that I would say he's feeling frustrated now because it hasn't gone through. If I'm wrong, you can correct me. Because these members have not hidden their agenda of working with him. We have audios. It's on record. So go ahead, please. Yes.
There are two ways restoration members can be disciplined. One by the House itself, using our ethics rules and regulation internally. And then the second one would be by their constituency that they represent. If their constituency recognize that this person is acting out of the representing themselves versus their constituency, they can recall that member and replace. And that's within their rights. However, the House also has an ethics committee that should look into the behavior or misbehavior of House members if it's out of line, and they can take disciplinary measure. I can tell you it's happened before. It's not something that I would say the House hasn't done that before. It has. Granted, most of the members that came through the LGAs have not experienced that because they were not in the trying times that our Restoration Council experienced and went through, and some of those um, rules apply to members. Believe you, let me just use a simple one without going into what you are maybe alluding to or audios that are out there. I hate to comment on something that maybe looked into. It can make me biased or seem biased, but the House Ethics Committee should look into that and handle those as such. But here is the issue. We have a, a robust, let me not use the word robust. We have a ethics committee that should look into those behavior or alleged misbehavior of House members and then bring a recommendation to the floor. And it also takes a steep vote for members to be removed, because for the Restoration Council to kick out a member, they have to write to the constituency explaining the reasons and why this member has violated this, and is no longer fit to be a member of the Restoration Council, and we would like a replacement. So it is not something that we don't have a way of handling that. Coming to the issue of thinking that because Mr. Anu felt he had the Restoration Council was safer for him, or he had members that he could manipulate. I We have our arguments in the house of differing opinions. Most of what people's opinions are people's opinion. What really counts is finally what did we vote on? And the question I bet to ask every constituency that has a representative in the Restoration Council, what information are they giving you? What are they telling you? How are you reacting to this information? Are you just absorbing it, or are you seeing things that you don't like and you have a voice of, hey, remember, take this is our problem. We want this solved. A good example would be the people of FACO. They've used the Restoration Council rightly. They went through all the process of the executive process to the Ethics Commission, and their results they were not satisfied. Then they came to the Restoration Council, and the Restoration Council took their complaint, looked at it, and gave some recommendation to help resolve the problem. And if it's not resolved, it may be something else, and I don't want to go into that detail of where and what that stands. But there is a process, there is a procedure of handling things, both for alleged recalcitrant, alleged members, just like I will say this, and it may shock Mr. Ate. The Restoration Council also has the right not just to impeach the president or the vice president, they can also impeach a cabinet member. It's within their rights. If they find out that a cabinet member is treasonous in their behavior or in their dealings with our enemies to disrupt, destabilize, or
I want
right
to give
out.
an opportunity for Comrade Eric to speak. But before I do that, I want to ask you: do you think that the behavior of any cabinet member now meets up what we call treasonous behavior?
I would not say per se, or without looking at what you have to present, just like it is alleged that Mr. Ate said the president says people should put things in writing and bring about these allegations about misappropriation or transactions of funds, heavy funds. May I ask? I say, who? $200,000. They be carrying up a basket on a half. Let me ask. It's just my opinion. But
I
there
think
should
that
be
should
an
have been asked.
electronic trail. There should be an
Okay,
electronic
Mr.
trail
Ate,
of
do you want
such.
to react to that?
Yes. Let me just, I'll react to a lot of things. First of all, when Dr. Lobadi says she's gonna say something that's gonna shock me, I just want her to know that that doesn't shock me, because I know the Constitution. The Restoration Council has the right to impeach anyone who was elected. You understand? However, if the president appoints a Secretary of State and that Secretary of State commits treasonous acts, the president has to, will first of all receive recommendations from the Restoration Council stating that due to some investigation that we took, it looks like this person has committed treasonous acts. You cannot just go in and just impeach an appointee of the president. That's what I'm trying to say, because they were not elected. Because they should be fired, not impeached. They should be fired by the president, because if the president is the chief law enforcement officer of the land and a member of his cabinet commits treasonous acts and it's proven, he shouldn't wait, he or she shouldn't wait for the Restoration Council. He should fire them. Because if he doesn't fire them, then the Restoration Council might actually impeach him. You see how it goes?
Thank you. I
That's
think
what I'm trying to
you
say.
are.
So that's why I was agreeing with her that, but disagree with her that don't say, Mr. Archer will show. I will not. The Restoration Council has the right to do that. But guess what? The Restoration Council has the right to impeach the vice president. If the vice president went into the Restoration Council and lied under oath, that's an impeachable offense. That's contempt of Congress, contempt of the Restoration Council. Because the vice president is also an appointee. But the Restoration Council cannot just impeach him per se. But the Restoration Council can make recommendations to the president and say, Mr. President, your vice president lied. He did this. He committed this offense. He disrupted the revolution with lies, unsubstantiated or whatever. I think he must go. Those are recommendations to the president. But guess what? If the president says, you know what, Restoration Council, I stand by my vice president. And the Restoration Council feels like the president is also conniving with the vice president in committing this impeachable offense by protecting him in his office. The Restoration Council has the constitutional authority to initiate articles of impeachment of both the president and the vice president. That is the way it is. If you read the Constitution, it states. So the Restoration Council make those recommendations. If there is a, let us say, a Restoration Council investigation of any member of government, they are within their rights to do so. When they find something, treasonable offenses, the first thing is to make recommendations to the president to fire that person. But they cannot just come and impeach the president.
Mr. Eric,
That's the way I look at it. That's my opinion. Thank you.
yeah, I like the discussion is getting healthier and we're getting to the close of it. I know it's sweeter as it goes and people may want us to continue. But I look forward to bringing the two of
But
you again.
Paddy, I don't want to cut you short, but please let me
Yeah.
just say something. I just want to say one thing that will authenticate what I just said, and will
Go
also
ahead.
give a lot of credit to what Malobati said, and also maybe give some recommendations on the way forward. Someone somewhere made a statement the other day that while the Restoration Council is doing all the things that they are doing, the president has no right, should not reshuffle his cabinet.
I was
Look,
about coming there.
okay,
I was
go
coming
ahead.
to that point.
Go ahead.
Now, this is what I'm saying. It's getting sweeter as we move along. Owing to the I'm calling public litigation that has been sponsored by members of cabinet and the Restoration Council. We know, and Malobati should know, those who are sponsoring the public litigation, particularly against the President of the Federal Republic of Amazonia, and also the what some want to call investigation, which I do not feel comfortable to call it an investigation. I would rather say it was a witch hunt. Does it hold the hand of the president, Malobati, to make structural reforms that will help the proper functioning of his government? Because we have been grounded for close to 3 months. I'm asking you, Malobati. I'm talking based on our constitution. Dr. Lobati, please.
Okay, before I get to your question, I want to tell Mr. Ate that the U.S. Senate in the past impeached a Secretary of State for War in 1876. So it is still within the right of the legislative arm to impeach um, an appointee of the president, but you have to have all the evidence, like you said. You can do that. You can't do that lightly. Impeachment is not a way a nation likes to go. It's a way that can be done. So there is a precedent, even within the U.S. Congress, that happened in the past. So it is not something that has not happened in other democratic processes. Okay, coming back to you calling it witch hunt by cabinet members and the president. There is something say that we say water eventually finds its level. And so if anything that is done, if it is without any um I should say, without substance,
Yeah,
without
substance.
credibility, or without evidence, it will fall flat. If there is, or there is even a likelihood, a little even suspicion, I think investigative processes have a way of, if somebody states an allegation, then you have to bring the other party to come and clarify and state whatever the contrary, or like you said, the president, Mr. Ate, says the president said he is even willing to release all his personal financial accounts, as well as did I hear two, because this will,
What
if this is
now? Let me quote the
proved.
president, Dr. Lobati. Let me quote the president. The president says he's willing to cooperate and to
Okay.
facilitate the investigative process. And I want to add, and that this is not going to be business as usual. And he said his objective is so that we don't go through the route of my trip to Boya that grounded our revolution or struggle for almost 2 years. And he wants that to be done, to be precipitated. And so he's calling on the Restoration Council to ask these members to put it in writing, notarize, and add their evidences. Until then, they do not have, in my opinion, any moral authority to speak anywhere, neither at the level of the Restoration Council. And Eric Ate has given a prescription. Whatever they brought in there should be kicked out if they cannot provide a notarized document. Please go ahead.
I don't think the Restoration Council per se was asking for a notarized document, or whatever. It's a committee. I am not part of that committee, but we will get the reports of that committee. But what I'm saying is, um, generally, when such things happen, committees will call the relevant the relevant individuals associated with all what is said to find out more. It's investigative. It's an allegation. It's not. It is not conclusive that the president did this. Let me. Going back to my analogy of the TV on the Mac in Walmart. What if I went and looked at that TV and asked the price, and asked, they have different brands, and I went into Best Buy and asked the person that serves in the TV, or is more knowledgeable, which of this gives me the best resolution, which of this TV has this better function, and we have that conversation for me to make an informed decision whether I want to buy that TV or not buy the TV. And if that is the case, and then I walk out and I don't, does that also mean that I committed to any um, event of either stealing or even committed to buying that TV? Not necessarily. So if those were discussions, um, as per se, about people coming up and saying we wanted to to look at some funding from somewhere, and those fundings are termed to be something else, okay, it is left for each individual to prove their case,
Okay.
whether it's the one that
Thank you.
brought the allegation
Okay.
or the one that is
There's
defending
an
themselves.
aspect of this discussion which you have
Thank
not
you.
handled, Dr. Lobati. My concern
Which
is whatever procedure or process is going on at the level of the Restoration Council, does that hold back the hand of the president to take necessary actions that will inject some stimulus into our movement? Because we've been grounded for some time.
um it is, let me be frank and honest to say that it is within the constitutional right of the president to submit nominees or to reshuffle his cabinet. That, let's put that on the table and say it is his right, granted by the constitution. No ifs and buts. But if we go to those musts, that I read, the must statements that I had. The Restoration Council can and could um recommend to the president and say, hey, Mr. President, as we're looking into these things and where we are, could you please hold off on some of this issue? Let me tell you, in America, because we are not a political system in terms of multipartism at this time, but I see Amazonia going to be plenty of that, vibrant. But remember,
Yeah.
the the way Congress works, the senators really do approve the presidential nominee. Trump had nominees. I don't think it's only Trump. Maybe even President Obama had nominees that never went through the Senate. They just held off and held back. And those people could not hold those positions because those people never got the vetting and the nomination. So we don't want to get into that kind of a gridlock where the president puts out a reshuffle cabinet and the Restoration Council is dealing with a lot of allegations that ties their hands. They cannot deal with it. And then, so we can come to an agreement as per in the must that, hey, for this, as we're dealing with this, could you please, Mr. President, just hold off? And we will have to give you some time limit. We cannot just say indefinitely. We can't do that.
Um,
That would be unconstitutional. But we can
Yeah, yeah,
agree
Mr.
with you.
Yeah, I like the
uh,
way you're putting your words, Dr. Lobati.
let me
But
say this.
I'll get back to
Um,
you on that.
Dr.
Comrade Eric,
Lobati,
go ahead.
Dr. Lobati, what she's, I'm not going to say what she's saying is entirely wrong, because when you look at it in the context of the United States government, it's different. You know what I mean? The Senate approves the president's nominees when it comes to the United States Constitution. In our Constitution, the Restoration Council only has the power to vet and vouch, which means what is vouch? The president appoints somebody, you look at the person, you ask them questions, you look at their commitment to the struggle, and then you say, you know what? I think this man will be a good fit. So I vouch for him that he will be a good fit. That is it. You cannot compare it with the United States Senate that actually has the constitutional authority to approve or reject. That's one correction I wanted to make. And Dr. Lobati is a very smart woman. She knows that if the
Oh,
president were to appoint members of government today, even if they don't vet that person can still be seated. But we don't want that. But we also don't want what is called legislative overreach, where the legislative branch of government thinks they can order the president. No, we don't want that. Because you know what? This government has to function. So if the president is being accused by his very close collaborators, the must will come in. Who should collaborate more in terms of the must that Ms. Lobati just read in the Constitution? Is it the Restoration Council of the president or his most closest aides? Do we think some people within this government who have championed the charge to remove the president can actually function and work with the president wholeheartedly? Would the president be comfortable taking advice from them? When the Secretary of Communication goes into forums and calls the president a lame dog, and then calls the president, you know what I mean, makes fun of the president and stuff like that. Let me ask you something. Do you really think that Secretary of State serves the president? So do you expect
I
the
want to
president to
reverse
just
some of
roll
the
his eyes?
questions you're asking, Comrade Ate. I want to reverse
Now,
them by saying that, do
this
you
is a
really think that this
rhetorical question.
member,
Listen, I
yeah,
am not asking questions. I'm just making
I know,
a
but I just let me
rhetorical statement.
reverse it and help you to argue
Yeah.
more. Do we really, because we try to put it all back at the level of the president, I want to reverse it. Do you really think that these individuals really want to even give advice to the president or work with the president? Because we're in a meeting and somebody was saying that if the president wants to work with, I don't want to call this lady's name, but she was like, if the president really wants to work with these people, do these people want to work with him?
That
Because
is
they have
exactly
made
what
their
I'm saying.
opinion categorically clear at the background and even in public that they think
Okay.
they cannot work. This is not competent. So go ahead, Mr. Eric.
If okay, like let me say this. I don't think the president should be subjected to work with people who cannot work with him because he is the one who was elected. This is his administration. He brings in people to help him execute his office. He appoints people to various functions within the interim government. But if those people are working against him, against his policies, against everything that he stands for, who are they serving? Yes, our first service is to Ambazonia, not to an individual. But when you serve within an administration, you have to be in line with the policies of the administration. And if you feel like the administration and its policies doesn't reflect yours, the honorable thing to do is to resign and leave, not to try to unseat the person who leads the administration, because that's what they have been doing. Malobati mentioned an impeachment of a Secretary of State, Secretary of War. I agree with her that you can impeach somebody, but I also qualified it that if that impeachment took place, it's because the president stood by the Secretary of War and told Congress that you know what, he was right in what he's doing. I'm not going to fire him. So we have to be careful. The Resolution Council, if the Resolution Council finds the vice president has committed impeachable offenses, and they make recommendations to the president and say, Mr. President, we have investigated and we have seen that your vice president or your secretary of state or your director of or anyone has committed high crimes and misdemeanors. I think it is time for you to let them go because they cannot serve in this government. And the president refuses to fire that person. The Resolution Council can actually initiate articles of impeachment of the president himself together with those people. Because by the president refusing to understand that these people have committed this crime, and if there's evidence that they have, the Resolution Council has the power to impeach. But if you look at it in retrospect, if you go back and see what has been going, these people have been permeating the social media with lies. I call it lies because they haven't presented any evidence yet. And that is why the president said, it is easy for someone to just stand up and say, oh, this person is a thief man, oh, this person don't do the one. But it's also very hurtful because this person lives in the world. When you make sensational remarks about somebody without any categorical evidence, it is wrong. That is why the president said, I am not going to sit down and just wait for my character to be assassinated overboard. And then finally, after 2 years, the Ambazonian people find out that I was innocent. Because the people, if the people in the Resolution Council who are conniving with these people succeed, I will be out of office. I would have been thrown out of office. And then the people will find out later that, oh my God, we just threw the president out for something that he didn't do. So that's why the president said, let's save the revolution by doing what? By having these people put all the accusation in writing and also give the Resolution Council all the evidence of the allegations. This thing should not just be allegations. Let the Resolution Council receive the evidence and call the president in, and so the president can give both the Resolution Council and his lawyers power of attorney to investigate him. The FBI might actually come in too, because if there's money laundering, he lives in the United States. Let the FBI go. Please, I don't want to go any further. But you know what, Madam Lobati, I'm going to tell you something. I'm just pleading with the Resolution Council to prevail on these people to put their mouth where the accusation is. Let them put it in writing and present the evidence so that we can see if the president is guilty of what he's been accused, instead of making blanket accusations to destroy the president's character. And it is shameful that members of the Restoration Council are actually endorsing this kind of behavior. And I think the Restoration Council, the General Assembly of the Restoration Council, should actually look to impeaching some of the members in that council who are conniving to destroy the president. And
You know,
even if he was just an
Maluko,
ambassador who was not even president, it's wrong to just tarnish somebody's character without evidence. Bring the evidence, let's see it. Thank you.
Dr. Lobati, react so that we can get to a close, please.
Here is what I'll say. Anything that is still within the committee, um, and it's not on the floor, you can't. I don't want to say this or that because by the time it gets out of committee to get to the floor, it may be totally different. Unfortunately, because a lot of these things were leaked, so that's why I said we are doing a lot of social media litigation, and we're doing a lot of social media administration and leadership, in quotes, all those in quotes, meaning that people who don't have the authority are trying to drive the authority of how to act, think, behave. So we
Dr.
have to
Lobati,
be
I'm
very
not cutting you short, but I'm just adding a spice to what you're saying so that it can make this discussion healthier. But then you're still going to conclude. It is even unfortunate that it presents Amazonia like a community. I would say La République du Cameroon has really tainted our culture because it is not of our culture. For some of these guys are my younger brothers, and then you talk about a man who can be your father. I caught some of these activists, and I caution them to stop some certain things they're saying on the media. But you find a young man that makes a statement like the thievery of Dr. Sacco, and he doesn't even have an evidence. He wants people to follow his platform. The thievery. When I look at this, I remember I told you about my daughter. We're talking about background. I told you because my daughter is just 7, but she reads very well, and she might be watching now. And if you're making a negative comment about me, one of these activists were saying terrible things about me, and she saw it and asked grandma, think about if the president's kids were watching. It's really unfortunate. Go ahead, please.
to be frank, we really have no control over the activists, but it becomes important that our state television, state media, brings out information to educate our people and let them see, hear what their government is saying. Um, we cannot let the noise of those who don't have the authority to either legislate or either execute be the driving force of our revolution. I appeal to every Amazonian, if there is any place you can have an insight, just remember you have members in the Restoration Council. If you don't, send your representatives, and you will get information. However, you may want to be careful that
Go ahead.
things that are still within the committee and that have not been on the floor are not perceived as, because somebody made an allegation, it means that the Restoration Council stands by the allegation without investigation. So we don't throw stones at the Restoration Council for just doing what they are normally supposed to do. Do that in keeping or investigating or hearing. Remember that when they start doing that, it is how we proceed with what information we get and how we look into it and how we gather the evidences that are produced, or who are the people that we invite to give testimonies. We have to be fair, balanced in how we do that, even within our committees. We cannot be so one-sided and ignore the other side. We will have to do that in a balanced, fair manner. That's why you've not heard me castigate any Restoration Council member here. I said, if and everything and evidence are, we have in the House mechanisms to discipline House members. And if the House members are not pleasing and they are not serving the interests of their constituency, they also have the right to withdraw that member. So likewise, I will not stand here and say, oh yeah, because an allegation was put and the Restoration Council is looking into that allegation, it means that the Restoration Council has taken side with that. That will be unfair, and it will just be an opinion, and it will be falsehood. I would rather let their process go through, and of course, when they come to the floor with their recommendations, there will be more questioning for the people who were not members of that. And then they may have to think, if what recommendations they are giving, what was this based on? You have to provide that. If it was not based on something concrete, then we'll say, no, then this is not right. So we cannot jump into conclusions to say, hey, the Restoration Council has totally agreed and jumped with this other group of people because they want to unseat the president or do this. No, we should refrain from that. I appeal, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I ask you to make a last contribution, I want to give this very necessary announcement. There's a video of you, Dr. Lobate, and Secretary Chris, and I hope I've been trying to establish communication with the studio, and I have not been able to, so that they could bring that video up, and that was my shock for you. But it is so unfortunate that communication between me and the studio has just been a mess this morning. I hope we will fix that as we move on. But let me make this announcement. Tonight, you will be having Fritz Misodi with a very big comeback uh, with his program, The Analysis. Please, every Amazonian, you have to follow up. It starts at 8 p.m. Amber time. We will be coming with the spokesperson per interim to intercept his program, not to stop his program. By 9 p.m., there is a big announcement from the spokesperson of the interim government, the senior barrister Fru Johnson, and he has promised that he will be telling us what awaits AFCON in Victoria. Perhaps he's coming to tell us that Ambazonia will just let Victoria, or will just let the Republic have his way. Let's wait. You are excited and anticipating like myself. So this evening, I may be coming back with the spokesperson to intercept Comrade Fritz's program. It's an interesting program I will be watching. But by 9 p.m. Amber time, the spokesperson will be live with myself. Now we've come to a point where we have to round up this discussion. I'm receiving some indication that we have a backup producer to help us. Let me do this communication. But while I'm doing so, let me ask you this. I'll start with the lady first. You've all made recommendations looking at the vision of Amazonia. I remember talking with you, Dr. Lobati, a few days ago, and we discussed on something. You said it was a gentleman arrangement. There is this thing which is a gentleman arrangement, and we know why. That a northerner should not lead us until we get to Boya. That plus whatever is in your mind, if you would have to advise the nation of Amazonia at this time, I'm talking about the concept behind this interim constitution that is still a work in progress. What will you tell our people? What will you tell decision makers as a way forward?
I'm glad you just put it that way. That I don't want to say a northerner. The Let's look at what even brought this so-called northern zone, southern zone, and whatever. And we are trying to take a big sponge to try to wipe that. We are all Southern Cameroonians at the time of our independence. We were all known as Southern Cameroonians. And if you look at it legally in the archives of the United Nations, we are Southern Cameroonians. There was a Northern Cameroons, um, which is another story. How they also got their independence instead of letting us do one independence. It was kind of another story. Let's leave that. But post the independence of 1961, Molan Jolly Tumbe rallied our people when he saw all what La République was doing, and they were supposed to meet in Boya, and BBC was supposed to be there to carry that. But of course, President Haijo at the time intercepted, blocked the people. None of us ever considered ourselves Northern Zone, Southern Zone, or Northwest, Southwest, or this or that. However, um, this issue of divide and rule is a good tactic that La République has used over the years, 50 something to 60 years, to get us divided so that they can conquer. There's a thing, divide and conquer. So whatever gentlemanly arrangement we are making, it's not constitutionally per se. It may just be a gentlemanly agreement that, hey, for the sake of us finding our way so that we get this, and being that the capital is also in the southern region, let us just let this be handled. But I want to make this clear. It is not a constitutional thing. Let us put that down. Whether it's a
Yeah.
gentlemanly agreement that was done, it may be driven for the interests of getting us to where we're going to get there faster. And so, even if somebody were to challenge this somehow, somewhere, they will be right to challenge it. But at the moment, um, it is a reasonable thing of our, let me call it, our elderly
Forebears.
initial,
Even though some of
no,
them are
no,
still alive, but I call
the
them
ones that are
forebears.
here now. Yes, our
Yeah.
forebears, and some of them are still alive, that they saw
Yeah.
it fit to go this route so we could facilitate our getting to Boya faster.
Thank you very much for that. Just to add to that before Mr. Ate reacts, I want to say that I want to use the word Bamenda man. I particularly like the way the Bamenda man has received this gentleman agreement. If you look at it, the Bamenda man, when I talk about Bamenda, I'm not talking about Mezam. I'm talking about everybody in what we call the Northern Zone today. These are people that have made very particular sacrifice for what we call Southern Cameroons today. We all know history. I don't need to go back. Until today, you look at the Bamenda man has joyfully received that gentleman agreement. They joyfully received President Sisiko, and they have joyfully received um, um, President Sako. I want to advise my brothers in the Southern Zone to be careful not to mess or to take the Bamenda man for granted, especially those who are so tribalistic. Eh, I'm talking to those from Fako particularly because they are so mean. I've spoken to a couple of them at the background. I don't want to call their names here. Some of them are really mean when it comes to the way they treat those from the Momo or some. I'm not from Momo. It so happens that I'm involved directly with Momo, and some are trying to use it against my credibility. But I'm saying that those from Fako particularly have to be very careful with their terrible behavior when it comes to the way the Bamenda man has received. Look at the joy. And if we had a president that was also tribalistic, we will not be having, we'll have maybe everybody from Fako, and that would have created a big issue for us. So this is a kind of God ordained struggle. We need to respect the Bamenda man. This is like, as an advice I'm giving to Amazonians. The Bamenda man per se has done a sacrifice, and they are joyfully doing it. Listen, at the time Comrade Sisiko, I like to call him Sisiko because I know what that means in the Manulan. Sisiko was made was placed at the helm of the governing council. Deacon Tassan Wilfred had every political capital more than him to be at the helm, but he took the back seat. Let's get this very clear. Deacon Tassan Wilfred, we can call him the father of this struggle right now. I get some narratives some people put on social media. Unfortunately, one of these person is my younger brother. He takes a very funny narrative about Sisiko and wants to sell. I respect Sisiko for the sacrifice he's paying. But Deacon Tassan is the father of this struggle. When he stood in Cameroon and spoke to the Yaoundé government, things changed. When he was struggling in the forest and walking with his feet into Nigeria, I was one of those praying for him. And that's why I respect this activist. Though I contradict his current political stand, I respect Priest J. Carl. At the time, the Tapangs and the Mark Barata were misbehaving. I respect J. Carl, Prince J. Carl, because he stood for Deacon Tassan in a way that was very exceptional. I was communicating with him, he didn't know. I think Kuku can tell him that the person that was communicating with you with a pseudo name from Ground Zero was Tapari King. Kuku Blinks can help him with that information. I was communicating with him. I was among those that were giving him information from the ground. I'm sure he'll be surprised I'm saying this on air today. And he stood for Deacon Tassan until Deacon Tassan had his way in Nigeria. We had the first, the second conclaves, and we're having a struggle that's so beautiful today. Before we make decisions, I'm talking to my younger brothers and age mates and brothers and senior and elder brothers. Let us look at where we're coming from before we dare to make decisions or litigate things we do not understand on the media. Comrade Eric, please give your impression as to a recommendation or something you want to advise our administration and the people so that we can round off. We have 2 minutes to end the program.
Well, the only advice I would give us as Ambazonians is to refrain from willful character assassination. It is very wrong to just go out and just assassinate somebody's character without any concrete evidence that the person has done anything wrong. If you're going to accuse somebody of something, please do it nicely. You cannot transform an accusation into something, into a guilty verdict on that person. It's wrong because words spoken cannot be taken, but it hurts. The reason why I mentioned some members of the Restoration Council earlier today was because while all this thing was going on, they were coming on Amber TV and making statements that were untrue. Because if a lawmaker sits here and says what was said by Cometa during the inauguration is law, he's wrong. And if anyone says, oh, you know what, Cometa didn't come out and say that by himself, a committee had sat and written it and everything, it's still wrong because no committee within the Restoration Council has the right to pass anything or to say anything that supersedes the Constitution. Whether you like it or not, it's just wrong. Even the president doesn't have any right to say something and say that's the Constitution. So if the president of Ambazonia, the vice president, the chief of staff, all of us will sit down and we'll say, hey, you know what? This is this or this is that. It is wrong. If the president wants to pass something, wants to say something based on on how he wants to administer certain aspects of the revolution, he can do it through an executive order. But what I'm saying, if the president stands up to that and says, you know what, he doesn't think this kind of people should serve in government. He doesn't think this kind of people should do this. That shouldn't be law. No, that's not the way it works. So no one is above the Constitution, whether it's one person or a group of persons. So what I'm saying is that oath of office that they read, even though it emanated from a group of people sitting within the Restoration Council and thinking about it, thinking about the situation and coming up with that, it was still wrong because it violated the Constitution as it is. That's all I want to say. Let Ambazonians just give the Restoration Council some time. And I also plead with members of the Restoration Council not to go out there and just say things that make them actually look small, in the sense that when you are a lawmaker and you are seen as violating the Constitution, as misrepresenting the Constitution, it's really wrong. You know what I mean? Some of us can do it because we are not even lawmakers. I'm part of the executive. But if you call yourself someone who actually makes the law and you cannot even respect the law, it is wrong. It is really shameful. Don't come and sit here and tell me that, a group of people can just sit there and say, hey, water is blue and it's the law. No, it's not. It doesn't work that way. So let's stick to the Constitution. I think Dr. Lobati did a great job today, based on my opinion. I think she answered her questions well. But I also know that, as the Secretary General of the Restoration Council, she will bring her intellect and counsel to some of the members of within the Restoration Council to refrain from making sensational remarks about things that they don't know. It is wrong to assassinate someone's character. And when you come here as a member of the Restoration Council and you are supporting certain things that actually accentuate that assassination, then you are wrong. It is wrong for anyone to do that. I can understand that social media, people out there can say whatever they have to say, but when you have members of government, when I mean members of government, I mean members of all tiers of government, some of them actually propagating this falsehood out there. It is hurtful. It is very hurtful. This man has a family, man. I'm pretty sure his wife watches us. I'm pretty sure his children watches us. You can't just go out and just lie on somebody and make it the law. That's not the way it works. Thank you.
And even include his wife. Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Ate. I am particularly joyful when I have what I call a strong woman uh, on the panel. Dr. Winnie Lobati is a woman with a very strong voice. She is one of the rare Amazonian women amidst the men we know. Let us be honest. We are from a cultural background where you don't just have a woman sit among chief or kingmakers and talk so loud. So you find some of these men are finding it difficult to take even women within the cabinet that seemingly are strong. Dr. Lubati is a woman, is a mother, a woman I'm very proud of. Her integrity and honesty and intellectuality. And Ambazonia would have to be proud. You're going to be seeing her more because the Restoration Council has shown interest to have a slot at least monthly or bi-monthly to communicate and educate the public on issues that are necessary for governance during this time of war, during the liberation phase of our struggle. Comrade Ate, as you know, is the man within the government with the most gigantic voice. I don't think there is anyone within our government that has this voice. And I hope he's a very busy man, a businessman and a hard worker. I hope I will have the chance to always bring him. But this is a discussion in progress. I would want to have some lawyers also chipping in our next session. And I look forward to having all the lawyers. If you are an Amazonian, you indicate, we will, for the sake of, I would say, for prudence sake, we may have to vet you via your local government to be sure that you are not just a talker, you are a doer. We will have to vet any Amazonian you're willing to partake in this discussion. Indicate you have the numbers. We will not be taking calls because there's a lot of work. I know some people want to make contributions, but hopefully in our next session this evening, if you have any concerns, get ready to log in by 9 p.m. Amber time, or with Fritz Mitsodi at 8 p.m. Fritz Mitsodi starts at 8 p.m. Barrister Fru comes at 9 with a big announcement. He's also going to be laying out a plan or telling us what awaits AFCON in Victoria, or what, if you want to call it, Limbe. Now, I want to greet those who are watching me from Mancon Mezam, in Taamba, in Taamafe, in Tambulung. I was born and raised in Bamenda, so I know these names and I enjoy them. I like them. The Nta actually means heal. Ntaamba, Ntaamafe, Ntaanturu. Ntaambulung, Ntaambese. Hello to you. Good morning. Ngongam. Those who are watching in Fako, those who are watching from Idiki Ekumbe, Munya, Moyenge, all of Manu, you have those watching from Etogo, Kendem, Bachua Kagbe, Bisongabang. Those, in fact, Amazonians home and abroad, happy Saturday. We have come to the close of this program, and I will be telling you. Bye bye. What's happening?